So Panchakosh, I think this is again something most of you are familiar with. We'll try and sort of see it slightly differently today. So Panchakosh, what is Panchakosh? This is this is one way. Now both Panchakosh and Trigun actually are ways to understand what is this Swa, right? So we are talking of Swast or alignment in our part. So then there is a lot of description around what comprises this work. So one way of seeing it is Panchakosh, right? That this we have these five layered existence. This is from the ancient text Taittiriya Upanishad, uh, and this systematically unravels the five dimensions of existence called the Panchakosh. Kosh meaning layer. Actually, the word Kosh is not used in the Taittiriya Upanishad. That comes later with Adi Shankaracharya's commentary. So this talks of the five layers of existence, and in exploration, it goes from gross to subtle, right? Because the gross is the first thing that we experience or see. So it moves from gross to subtle. Now, as we discover these successive dimensions, we move inwards. So antar is the word used in Taittiriya, that we keep going inside. So there is, from the outer, we are going inside to explore these five dimensions. And it also says that the inner dimension is the source of the outer one. So it's like a projection. So it's like a beam of light. Like you have a source of light, and if you see, it basically starts spreading like this. So what we see outside is the outer thing, which is the biggest, and the inside keeps getting more and more focused or concentrated or smaller in dimension, in that sense, in this way. So the five layers of existence as we know them are Annamay Kosh, which is the body, Pranamay Kosh, the vital energies. This is now going gross to subtle, right? Inward. Manomay Kosh, our mind, which is largely thoughts and emotions. Vigyanmay Kosh, which is the cosmic intelligence, and Anandmay Kosh, which is translated as a bliss body. So these are the five koshas. Now we'll look at them in a slightly different way. So the first one, right, if you have to see it as an exploration, so the first one that comes to mind, or that we are instantly aware of, right, as our kosha, is of course the body. Very simply, right, that we are aware. So if you see it as a open-ended exploration of what we are, what makes us, so the first thing that will be obvious is body. And what's the characteristics of the body? That one, it starts with desire. So it started, why did the body come into existence? Because two people had the desire to mate. So there was a certain desire which starts the process of creation of the body. Then how it is made? It's made of food. So how does that body grow? By whatever we eat, right? In fact, every cell of the body is replaced once in 7 years at least. Every cell is new in 7 years. So every 7 years we have a completely new body. Some things change faster, like the cells of our tongue, they are replaced every 21 days. But different components, bones take the longest, but even bones, the cells of our bones change in 7 years. So, and what is the material that changes it? The food that we eat. So it's made of food. And where does it end? It also ends as food. How does it end as food? In whatever form, in all forms of cremation or after our life, it becomes, right, when we burn whatever is left, that's given in the water, where it becomes food for the animals in water. If it's buried in the ground, then the insects basically consume it. So it becomes food at the end as well, right? What does it comprise of? It comprises of the matter. So whatever we are seeing physically, it also comprises of the microbiome, right? Each one, we have 10 times more. Microbiome is the bacteria, the virus which reside in us. And the fact is, we have 10 times more bacteria, virus cells existing in us than our own cells. So we are living with 10 times more bacteria, virus in our own body at different points. So gut being the most common, our respiratory system, our mouth, on the skin surface, everywhere. So our microbiome is part of our body, and we coexist with this bacteria all the time. And our sensations, which are present in the body. So this is what the body is made of. And the first thing that will come to our awareness when we ask this question, who am I or what am I? The second, right after body, what will be it? It will be the mind, right? So this is what, again, most philosophers, everyone has acknowledged that there is a mind, and we are aware of it. We are aware of our mind. How do we know there is a mind? Because we have these thoughts, we have these emotions, we have memory, there is identity about who I am, a man, woman, Indian, no American, this caste, that caste. So identity is so diverse. It's up to us what identity we create. So there is a certain subjectivity to that. And the other parts of the mind is the fact that there is influence through logical arguments, through emotional arguments. We are able to influence. And sometimes the other property of mind is that it serves us and sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes the mind can be a great asset, but it can also cause a lot of problems. And we are seeing that sometimes with some of the mental disorders also right now. So mind can be both ways. So that's our second component that comes into our awareness. Now, the third component, which comes very quickly, not very quickly, as quickly as the body and mind, but for some it does, and some philosophies hence cover it, is who is being aware of this mind as well, right? So what's that? And at least on some of the spiritual side, etc., we'll talk of the soul. So body, mind, soul. This is the three part. Most philosophies will cover it, besides people who don't believe in the soul. But at least for the yogic system, there is a soul. It's known as Swa, Atma, Spirit, Ruh. So different words used in different cultures. But again, most cultures has this notion that there is something beyond the mind, which we can call as the soul. So these three, the body, mind, soul, are clear, right? We usually understand and accept them. Now the two additional layers that come are the layers that connect. These are the connecting layers, right? That's what the Taittiriya Upanishad talks of. So the layer that connects the body and mind. And this mind-body problem or body-mind connection is a big area of research and thought process in the modern science as well. And this is what essentially is the life processes that are going on, right? Between the mind and body, the life energy that's there. It's the difference between a body which is alive and which is not, right? It sort of creates a way of communication between our mind and body. Of so if I want my hand to move, my mind is saying, but if this layer is not there, my hand will not actually move. It can be seen physiologically to some extent in terms of our nervous system, in terms of our chemical messaging, but in the yogic system, there is a more subtle layer than that. So what even moves the nervous system, the electricity, the current that's moving in our body, and the direction of that, that's the body mind connection. That layer is there which connects these two. Similarly, there is a layer which connects the mind and soul. This is the mind soul connection layer. This is the layer where there is a slighter higher degree of abstraction from our mind. This is where there is discrimination, where there is cosmic intelligence. And this is different than our analytical intelligence that we think of in the mind. So mind will have a kind of intelligence which is based on facts, analysis, on past experience, on projection of the future, what will it be like. So all that is in the mind, and that's where depression, anxiety can come in, because that's in the past or future. The connecting layer actually is in the now. It is only concerned about the now, about the current situation. It is able to release all the requirements or the memories of the past. So there is no memory there. It's able to release what's the plan for the future, but really take a decision based on the current. So the intelligence is based on the current situation, on the moment of now. This is also something that we talk of as the manifestation of the swa. So this soul is something that's not, it's beyond experiences, how it is defined in the yogic philosophy. So the all the experience that we have, the momentarily experience of things like calmness, stillness, all those peace, is this connection. It's actually the experience of this connection, that momentarily experience of this connection. So it's the manifestation of this swa in whatever we can experience or be aware of. So this is one way of looking at the 5 layers of existence. And as you can see, the names are that this is Annamay, or the body. In scientific language, we call it matter. In Pranamay, that's the next, the connecting layer. And in science, it's energy. So you can already see in science has come to the point where it's saying mass is energy. So E equal to mc square, the famous equation of Einstein, is what's converting, saying all matter is energy. And this is how it's been put across in this in the Taittiriya Upanishad, in the yogic system. Then there is the mind, Manomay Kosh, which is information. And the new scientific discoveries are also sort of talking of what is the source of energy, that it's really information. So it's something like what we see in our, say, LCD TV, right? We see energy being coming out, which is what we perceive with our light, with our eyes, sorry, with matter. And what is being projected is information. It's like what's there in this cell, that's an information. What's the color of this particular pixel, that's information. So information sort of guides what the energy projection will be, and that energy is what translates into the matter as we see it, right? And then there is the Vijnanmay, which is the intelligence, the cosmic intelligence particularly, which directs the information. So this is, as we are going here, it's getting more subtle, right? From gross, from matter to intelligence, and the source, as we said. So intelligence is the source of information, and information is the source of the energy, and energy is the source of the matter. Probably I should have had that arrow, but basically, if you see from intelligence to matter, as we go from top to down, it's going from the cause to the effect, from the source to the destination. That's the starting point. And the last one, of course, is Anandmay. I don't think there is an equivalent there yet, which we can name, but we use the word bliss or joy to describe this as the source of everything. So, yeah, so this is one way of trying to understand the Panchakosha a little bit more, blended with the modern way of thinking of the philosophy as well, modern philosophy. Okay. So quick pause, check. I know Panchakosha was something people were familiar with. So any reactions, thoughts, questions on this way of looking at it?
Out of all this Panchakosha, right? This cosmic intelligence or Vijnanmay Kosh, that is something is little bit difficult to understand, and how one attains that through yoga. Because the way I understand is like it's cosmic intelligence, like something what's happening in our galaxy. How would I automatically know by sitting here, or something which I never saw, right? So how automatically, is it a magic or something like that? That's something I'm trying to understand.
Yes. Yes. So one way to see it is, so this is a description of this self, right? So what we have here, this, right? It's, so while we use the word cosmic intelligence, it's really about that intelligence being manifested in this particular existence. And one way of So more than understanding is experience. And I was noticing you said calmness when you were standing, right? So that's an experience of that. That's one way of experiencing that calmness. That moment when you're experiencing that calmness, you are experiencing your Vijnanamay course. You have been able to get out of your body, mind, and just experience that for a moment. That's why it's said as the manifestation of that cosmic intelligence. And the goal of yoga is to move inward, so to become more and more in that state. So today, to be in that state, we had to be really still. We had to stop everything else and stand. But with practice, you can be in that state even while moving, while doing things slowly and slowly, as your whole mechanism gets attuned to that. And that's the intention. And then when you are in that state more and more, you will feel connected to that same layer in the cosmos that is there. So in parallel, the theory is that these 5 layers exist in the overall cosmos also. While it's 5 layers of our existence, it's the 5 layers of overall existence. So we will be able to then connect with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So similar question on Pranamaya Kosh. Is it as simple as something connecting to our breath or energy, or how do we define that experience of Pranamaya Kosh? Is it breath or something else?
So breath is still is part of the Annamaya, but the reason it is used as, the 2 reasons why it is used, I think, to connect with Pranamaya, right? So the first is that is the fundamental difference one notices between a live person and a dead person. So that's how we detect. While there are other ways, so there are mechanisms that people have stopped their breaths for very long, yogis. So in that sense, it is not directly, but most common experience is the difference between life and death is breath. So that's why it's used that way. The second is breath is the breathing process is a very unique process, because that's the only process in our body. Not only, sorry, but very few processes, but the most obvious process in our body, which we control voluntarily as well as it goes involuntarily, right? So as I'm speaking, I'm breathing, I'm not aware of it. But if I want, I can be fully aware and also control my breathing. I can do deep, shallow, whatever I want. But there is a natural rhythm to it as well. Otherwise, if you notice, your hand is voluntary movement, right? All your limbs are voluntarily. Your digestive process is completely involuntarily, your excretion. So this is the one process which has both in it. And prana is about the life force, life processes, as we said. It's about getting control or getting charge of the life process, of the life flow in our body. So that's why breath becomes a very good way of finding an entry to it through our material body. Right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be. Can you think of another process in life, in our body functions, which is both voluntary and involuntary? It will be hard. Bhagyashree, doctor knows that she's lifting her hand.
Blinking eyes.
Yes, blinking eyes is. Bhagyashree, you had another one? Thinking. Yes, that's the manomaya, already beyond the pranamaya, so it goes the other way. Yeah, so that's why it is so very closely associated with breath, but it's not breath. That is also very clear that it's not breath, but it's a very good entry point, and that's a lot of emphasis on that. Good. So we'll move on to the next Trigun. Thank you. Okay. So the next aspect we'll talk about is the 3 attributes of nature. So this is the Triguna. This comes a lot in the Sankhya philosophy as well as in Bhagavad Gita. So what are the 3 attributes of nature? Right. So there are basically 3 attributes, as the word goes. These are inseparable. Some few things very important. These are inseparable. So it's not like these are three distinct and we can isolate them like science would want to at some extent. But they are saying these are inseparable. They are everywhere. And they are non-intelligent by themselves. So this is not what's giving the will. There is no intelligence. So in some ways, that means if mapping it to Panchakosha already, they are in the first three layers, Annamay, Pranamay, and Manomay. They are mutually dominating, supporting, productive, and cooperative. Means they work together and support each other, mostly cooperate towards a single purpose. So they don't work independently per se, but they have their own independent influences on everything. So everything is made up of these three things, which we will now discuss. So it's just to understand their context first. So the chair you sit on, the table, the laptop, you yourself, the body, what we see around us, nature, everything has these three attributes or three modes which are existing there. Right. So what are these three and what are their purposes? So if we see the essence, right? So what is the essence? The essence of the first one is attraction. Second one is rejection. And the third is indifference. So that's what role they play. What's their purpose? Why are they there? The first one illuminates, gives sort of light, shows what it is. The second one activates. So a lot of movement processes there, and the last one restrains. So it holds together, the holding. So holding energy, holding principle, activation principle, movement principle, and illumination or lightening up principle. What are their attributes? The first one is light, buoyant, illuminating. It's bright and it's very light. You don't even sometimes see it very obviously. The second one is exciting, and it's mobile because it's active. And the last one is heavy and enveloping. Right. So with these attributes, if we were to see, now as I said, everything is a mixture, right? So if in that mixture, what happens when one of them dominates? So what happens when the first one dominates? There is happiness and knowledge. What happens when the second one dominates? There's a lot of action. Material result oriented action which is driven by a goal, a result. And when the last one dominates, there is a lot of demotivation, laziness, sleep, kinds of things that happen naturally. And these are our own states, right? I'm sure we have all experienced these different phases or states in our life, right? Where we have been driven, we have been very demotivated, sleepy, lazy a lot of times, or we have been very, very active, moving like passionately towards a goal, or we've just been happiness, joyful, we've just been happy, we've just been feeling satisfied, content. And that's driven by what of these principles are dominating in our system at that point. Okay, so what are these names? I chose to give the names later on because the names sometimes create a bias. But what are these names? So the first one is called Sattva. The second one is called Rajas. And the third one is called Tamas. So Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. These are sort of the three attributes, you can say, of nature, of Prakriti, of everything. The whole world is composed of this. So one way of seeing the world was through the Panchakosha layer, that these are the 5 layers of existence. The other way of seeing the world is through Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. That these are the 3 attributes which are always present in different quantity, in different levels, in different things. And they have their influence. So based on what is more dominant, the sort of effect is seen. The modern sort of concepts of these, in my opinion, what I've come across is Tamas is what is now being sort of understood as dark matter. So this is a discovery, I think 20-25 years old only. So dark matter, a big cause of why the big crunch, if people follow science, like how the world may collapse in itself. Rajas is dark energy. This is even more recent, I think, the discovery of it. Even though Einstein talked of it, then retrieved it back, but this is the dark energy, which is what people. So dark matter is, in science, is what's there in the universe, which people are seeing the influence of. So they are seeing the restraint, experiencing the restraint, but they are not actually finding matter. Like we know the universe is empty, is what we know, a vacuum, but they are finding this, the gravity is there, the restraint is there. So that's why they've named it dark matter, because the gravity is not coming from matter that can be touched or felt, but it's just there, the effect is there. The same is the case with energy. They are not finding the source of energy, but they're seeing the effect of it, that there is movement there, and that's the cause of expansion right now of the universe. And there is coherence. The sattva is something, sorry, the reason I put a question mark, I don't think there is a very clear scientific principle right now which sort of fits this. And I think there's still to be, maybe that's the one to be discovered. That's there. To make this may be very theoretical, so we'll make it practical. Let's look at a object. Let's look at this, right? So let's try and identify. Look at this picture, and you can unmute and say where you see sattva, rajas, tamas in this. The example of lighting of a lamp. Yes, you can unmute and share. Where do you see? Let's take one first. So let's start with tamas. Where are we seeing tamas?
Oil or that bati.
The bati. Okay. So the physical bati you are seeing tamas. Yeah. Okay. Oil you are seeing, yes.
The lamp and the table.
Yeah, the lamp and the table. So the physical body of the lamp. Yeah. Okay. Where else? Others?
Can we say if when it was not lit, the darkness was tamas?
When it was not lit, the darkness was tamas. So the absence of something.
Yeah.
So there is that is one, the philosophical meaning of tamas is that, because it has that property of enveloping, of creating a delusion. Yes. Okay. So good. Yeah. Tamas well covered. So rajas, where do we see rajas in this?
Heat,
Light.
heat and the heat is
That
rajas.
flame.
The flame, you think? Okay. So what's lighting the flame?
Fire.
Fire. Okay. What else? So after the fire, what's keeping the flame burning?
Oil.
Oil.
Oil. Yeah. Oil. The fuel.
Fuel.
The fuel. So that is the primary rajas that's there.
Also the oxygen.
Yes, the oxygen also will have rajas because it burns the flame. Yeah. Correct. Yes. So that's the fuel, the activation, right? That's giving the energy to keep it going. That's rajas. And the flame itself is what? What's the flame's key property?
Sattva.
Sorry, sattva. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's illuminating, it's light, it's buoyant. That's the sattva concept. So it's not like in the flame there is a little rajas. There is also possibly some particles there which are the tamas. But the primary, the dominant thing is sattva there. Same with oil, right? So like oil also is tamas. It has matter. It has restraint in it. but its primary is Rajas. And same with the diya. The diya has the lamp, the wick. They also have Rajas, Sattva in it. That's why we can see them. There is some Sattva in it. Otherwise, we wouldn't see it also. But it's dominantly Tamas. Yeah. One of the other properties of Tamas is that it creates a delusion. Delusion means it creates a misunderstanding in some ways, right? So what do we say? Usually we say the diya is lit, right? We say the lamp is burning. But is the lamp really burning? Right? So the lamp is that diya, the container, which is so heavy with tamas. Correct? So that creates an illusion or a delusion that is what is burning. The identity becomes the lamp, while it's the fuel, the oxygen, the oil that burns, or even the wick doesn't burn if there is enough oil. So wick is also very tamas driven. It's the oil, the oxygen that burns. Yes. Okay. Any questions?
So, like we keep hearing that across the ages, the tamas and rajas is increasing. So, so is it like, does it signify that the world is collapsing or unfolding? Like, because dark matter is increasing and dark energies are increasing. So, is it a process that signifies something?
Yeah, that's interesting. Also, I think the only caveat here is the word dark is not coming like Dark Vader, or the scientists have named it dark matter and energy because they can't physically apprehend it right now. Right? There is no, so for them that is the darkness. It's not necessarily that it's bad intentioned or anything, but those terms do give that sense. But yeah, I think even science is discovering that the dark matter energy are playing that role. So the universe is expanding, and there was a time where it was thought that it might collapse on its own because of dark matter. But they discovered it's not. Now somebody has published in India. They have found that there is no expansion. So it was how they were reading the data. Redshifts was causing that expansion. So that area is, I think, still exploring, evaluating. I think, yeah, Rajas, tamas increasing will have its own implications on society at large, on what they do. So there is more, you can say, delusion or more attraction to the matter that's there, that we can see. That's how Kali Yuga is also described. All that has its own implications on how society will evolve or not. I think the focus, the all that we can do is this, right? We control only this part of ourselves. So I think that's where we can stay. At some point those questions become irrelevant, and we can't really do anything about it for that part.
So in some of my readings and some other interactions, I think the way we had concluded, or not concluded, but better understanding, I would say, ki in general, there is a slight misconception that only sattva is good and rajas is very high on energy and tamas means low on energy, which may be correct, but it doesn't mean that we have to be always associated with sattva. In general, if we have to choose, maybe our overall personality or lifestyle has to be sattvic, but there will be moments when you need to choose rajas and there will be moments when you need to choose tamas, is what I had understood.
Yes. Yeah, if there is no tamas, there is no memory. There is no tamas, there is no sleep. We can't survive. But yes, the goal is to go more and more towards. It's a mix. Like, that's why I think the first thing is all three are there always. They are inseparable. It's just what is dominating, where do we want to shift, if at all, through our free will we want to go. But if there is no tamas, there is no body. Exactly. Great.
So after death, like, do we like transcend into complete sattva, or what, like what happens there?
Yes, that's a interesting question. So there are different views in different scriptures, and yeah, I think we'll keep that Abhi out of this. Otherwise, it will become very long. Yeah, we'll take that maybe later. Okay. So this is actually a great point also for when I share screen. Do you guys see only the PPT, or are you seeing more than the PPT? Only the
Only PPT.
Okay, you're not seeing my screen because I sometimes change the view there, and I'm seeing a lot, so I have to figure that out. Okay.